Hey everyone, so I figured I would do a review on the OSWE AWAE course, Web 300 from Offensive Security. Kind of give you my take on it, and hopefully it helps at least some people who are either looking into doing it, don't know much about it, or just wanted, want to talk about it. So I figured I would do a video. As also an extra to that, I also have built a bunch of episodes on building a web application in PHP from the start. So, for example, setting up the database, writing the code, exploiting it, and then everything in between, really, building the application, exploiting it, building scripts, talking through all these attacks, XSS, session writing, XXE, LFI, RC, and reverse shelling. Those are in the videos after this, so go ahead and check them out. And it covers all these different bits and pieces, PHP, SQL, JavaScript, and XHR, Python, and XML. And it'd help me a bunch if, you could go ahead and check it out. And here's a little preview into the exploitation aspect. But yeah, as you can see here, the attack's covered. So yeah, go check it out. It'd be much appreciated. So back to my review. So my take on the course, really. I think the website does very much cover what it's about. But before I cover that, I thought I'd explain what the OSWE is, just so for those who happen to stumble on this video and don't know what it is. So basically, it is an offensive security certification and course where you learn to exploit web applications from an advanced perspective, kind of just jumbling the words up there. But really, it's a case of just advanced web attacks. So that is source code analysis, along with some black box stuff in there as well, and basically just basically hacking web apps, really. An entire course dedicated to advanced techniques of hacking web apps, and there's a video that explains all the individual bits and pieces. Highly recommend you go ahead and check it out. But it's yeah, it's definitely worth doing. So going back to my take, really the website kind of explains a lot of how I feel about it. All the things here, they are spot on. Everything they talk about here is fully accurate. Talking about what you learn and what you need to know. It's dead on. But I thought I'd give my take. So first of all, like, what do you learn? So it does say on the website, but I'll give you my thoughts on it. So first of all, you learn about debugging. So that could be debugging Java, which is compiled, debugging PHP, which is just plain text in a folder, and then other bits and pieces too. So C#, for example, it's a little bit more complicated because when you have C#, you compile it into a binary and basically goes through, decompiling it, debugging it, and working with it. So it covers a lot of the aspect of all different kinds of languages, both compiled and interpreted. So super helpful and a lot to learn. I personally hadn't done much, for example, C# development or pen testing, really. I'd done fit client testing as a pen tester, but officially looking at the source code and that kind of thing of a C# application didn't come up too common. However, it's becoming quite common now, so I think it's definitely worth learning. Okay, so now we've kind of covered, the debugging aspect. I want to cover like the tools. So I believe it mentioned somewhere around here about Burp. So yeah, so the tools it includes. So Burp Suite. If you use Burp Suite, it is one of my favorite tools. Can't live without it. It's so simple but so effective. DNSpy. This is used to basically debug and analyze basically any binary, although it works best as C#. I think I put in non-C# binaries before, and it's kind of decompiled into C#, but it works best with C# is my understanding. JDGUI, that's for Java. Basically, it's JDGUI really is just used to decompile the Java. I wouldn't advise you use JDGUI to actually do any source code analysis, but yeah. Visual Studio, that starts at VS Code, like here, VS Code, and yeah. And then just a trusty text editor, basically just like Notepad or whatever. Those are pretty much all the tools you need. Mainly, the biggest tool you need is just knowing the languages, knowing how to find the vulnerabilities. You don't have to rely on the tool so much. You just have to rely on your intuition and your understanding of the application. Here are a bunch of the attacks. I could read them out, but honestly, you could just pause the video and read them yourself. It's going to waste both our time if I then read them out. But yeah, basically just a bunch of attacks. Very, very useful stuff. Very, what's the word? Very appropriate for today's times. We're still getting like SQL injection in the web app and stuff. It's very important. We're getting some more interesting stuff, like for example, .NET deserialization. I mentioned before, .NET is becoming quite prominent. So it's quite a common thing to come across, especially in more new web apps nowadays. And yeah, so another question I had was like, so what else do you learn then? So you learn the attacks, but you also learn the methodology. So you learn how to review source code quickly and effectively. So the exam is 72 hours long, but 48 hours of that is the actual practical where you have to hack the web apps. And I say web apps, there are, at least for me personally, there was more than one, that's all I can say. I don't want to break any OS offensive security rules, but there's more than one web app, put it that way. So you learn how to basically review multiple web apps quickly and effectively across different languages. So, for example, one of mine was Java. You learn to decompile code, so I had to decompile the Java code, review it, and basically pwn it. Can't so much talk about how I did that, but basically it came down to looking at where my user input was involved, how it's being handled, where it's being processed, and if I can find a vulnerability in the way it's being processed or handled, what does that grant to me? And the main case in OSWE really is to get an authorization bypass, so basically become admin, and then then get RCE. Hence why in my series, I demonstrate that. Basically abusing admin functionality that you wouldn't have access to as a normal user. Okay, so next on, there is how to map the application. So basically this comes down to using Burp and using your own intuition as to how to actually map what's on the application. So, for example, if it's PHP, you want to look for, say, like upload.php or file.php or admin.php, that kind of thing. For example, if you manage to get access to the backend code, you want to basically know how that corresponds to the application. So, for example, like if I have an admin.php and you're on the website admin.php on that part of the page, you're going to hopefully be able to, have the intuition say, oh, these two are the same. If I do something here, it's going to reflect on the code. So yeah, another thing, it talks about SQL and how to exploit each type of SQL. For example, MySQL and PostgreSQL. Language-specific vulns, so for example, PHP or Node.js. So PHP has a number of specific vulnerabilities. They probably are highlighted here. So for example, there might be, I'm not sure if it's on here, but specific language-specific vulnerabilities. And yeah. Next on, other methodologies, how to script the entire chain from 0 to RCE. So for example, let's say you have an authorization bypass of some description. You need to then write Python code to do that work, or whatever programming language you want to use. I use Python because it's simple and powerful. You write Python code to basically do whatever the authorization bypass requires you to do, and then you need to then chain the RCE on top of that. So when you hit go, basically you have RCE in like 1 second. Doesn't have to be within 1 second, but you get my point. Basically, with minimal user input, you hit go and you have RC basically. So another question I had was what languages are covered. So I came across Node.js, which is quite a common one nowadays. I didn't get it so much when I used to do this stuff, but Node.js is becoming quite common. It's become quite popular. PHP, PHP is just made of vulnerabilities. Partly the reason I wrote this demo in PHP, because it's full of vulnerabilities and there's probably about 1,000 on this page. And I figured, I haven't secured it to be solid, so you guys can go ahead and find them. Next on, Java. So it is compiled. Then we have C# and .NET. Then we have a little bit of Bash maybe involved, although not a requirement. SQL, so varying SQL languages, for example, like PostgreSQL and MySQL. Yes, the syntax is pretty much the same, but there are certain functions and that kind of thing that are included in other versions of SQL that are included in other, for example, Oracle versus PostgreSQL, or PostgreSQL versus MySQL. Next on, we have JavaScript. So I talk about in my demo using JavaScript to do session writing and basically access admin functionality. That is covered in the course. Very helpful, something I hadn't really done a whole lot of. So not JavaScript, but the session writing aspect. So that was really helpful. Then there's regex, which is basically just pattern matching. Very helpful when it comes to trying to find, code, basically, like vulnerable code. And they're not really a language, but WebSockets. So WebSockets are used for some of the functionality, basically to do various things. So I hadn't really touched WebSockets a whole bunch, but they're in there, and it's important to know how to use them, and you'll learn how to kind of use them in the course. Next on, we have what attacks are covered. So, I mean, the attacks covered right in front of you here. But just the ones off the top of my head, I had XSS, SQL injection to RCE, type juggling, deserialization, file upload to RCE, command injection, and authorization bypass. The last one isn't particularly an attack. It's just a case of, a word to describe the kind of attack, the vulnerability you would give, basically, if you define it. For example, you get like an authorization bypass by, for example, being able to pre-compute a token, for example, in this one. Okay, so how I found the course. It was the course is excellent, first of all. So the video series and the PDF content, very helpful, all comes together very nicely. And I found it generally quite straightforward. The extra miles some of them were challenging. The Node.js one was particularly challenging, but once I understood the under the hood of Node.js, it was a lot simpler. So I found it quite straightforward. Learning all the content. I finished all the content in under a month, roughly. I had an advanced infrastructure hacking course that I was in the middle of, so I actually had to take time off from doing my OSWE studying to do another course. So yeah, I found it generally quite straightforward, and the content is very accommodating. It only really assumes you know some basics. That there's no having to know loads of web apps beforehand. Just basically how to do pen testing, web apps, and just have a general feel. A year or so on Hack the Box of here and there should give you kind of what you need to know. Just the odd bit of Hack the Box really should be okay. But yeah, overall I found the course very good. The videos, the PDF, all excellent, all very up to date, all very very useful. So that turned out to be very good. And yeah, so then when it came to the exam, all of the content taught in the course was fitting perfectly. Everything that was mentioned, everything that was covered, either was in everything that was taught was either in the exam or useful to be during the exam. And not a lot of things outside of the course were inside the exam. Obviously, they're teaching you these things, they want to test on your knowledge of it, so it's going to obviously pertain to the same content they taught you in the course. But yeah, overall, the course was excellent. Me personally, with the exam, I had 60 days. That's how much my employer paid for me to have it for. I then booked my exam 2 weeks after my 60 days. I booked that in the first week of my OSWE because I kind of wanted like a deadline to hit. I said, right, okay, I want to basically have my exam passed in like basically 74 days or so. So yeah, that's what I did. And it worked out all well for me. I passed first time with 100%. It took me around, I started around 9 a.m. I pretty much had pwned everything by the evening, like around 1 a.m. Went to bed for 8 or so hours, and I woke up and just had to finish some bits off, and then I'd passed by like early morning on the second day. So I found it quite straightforward, but then again, that's because I like to think that my studying supported me in my endeavor. I'm certainly no expert at web stuff, but the studying of the course well equips you to learn. So it's definitely possible to do in around half the time that you're given. But if you don't pass it first time, or you only pass it, in the last 5 minutes of the exam, hey, a pass is a pass. But like I say, it's very important to study all the concepts taught, and just maintain your time well and go from there. Okay, so a few questions I had. So should I take the course and exam? 100%. If you want to level up your web app skills, then 100%. I have nothing else better to say than that. You're gonna learn so much. You're gonna get a badge when you pass, and you're gonna feel so good when you pass. And I mean, look at all the attacks you learn. Like if you don't know these already, or you know them a bit, you're just gonna solidify your knowledge of them. So 100%, I'd go for it. I pretty much passed the course in the first month or so. But I would advise you get 60 days just to cover in case say you have a delay or maybe you need to understand something further. Yeah, I advise at least 60 days though. Hey, if you can do it in 30 days though, power to you. Save money and get the exam cert. So yeah, should I take the exam? 100%. I think it's definitely worth it if you want to level up your web skills and just generally just learn. learn how to distribute your time better, and just there are no negatives to doing the exam, honestly. So which one is better, OSCP or OSWE? Personally, I preferred OSWE. I like web apps more. During my exams, OSCP and OSWE, I enjoyed OSWE more. It was almost like more my area of expertise, if you could call it that. It's just something I prefer. OSCP was quite general, whereas OSWE was quite specific in the sense of, you're just doing web apps, you're just doing source code review, and that's pretty much all you have to do. So yeah, I would say OSWE. You don't actually have to do the OSCP to do the OSWE, although technically the OSWE is harder. Having done both, the OSWE is harder, but not so much harder that you have to do the OSCP first. As long as you're familiar with reverse shells and that kind of thing, you should be okay. You need to at least have some knowledge of how to, how attacks work, how reverse shells work, and how you can obviously exploit them. All right, so will I get a job after clearing the OSWE? Again, depends on your skills. If you paid someone else to do the exam for you, and then you had an interview and they asked you questions about it, and you don't know the answers, then you're not going to get a job. But if if you took the exam yourself, you studied, you learned it, you've got knowledge around the OSWE along with the content taught in there, then I don't see why it would hurt. I don't see why you won't be able to get a job with that certification. It's a well-regarded certification authority, offensive security, and also the exam is very well put together and very commended. So I don't see why you wouldn't get a job, but I wouldn't rely on it. It depends on the employer, it depends on what they want, it depends on your skills outside the exam. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. You want to know a lot of the ways to do a lot of things, really. So it's a case of, just having a very broad skill set. Okay, so how much experience, in my opinion, should a person have in a development environment or pen testing in order to do the exam? Well, honestly, just a bit of hack the box, understanding how to reverse shell stuff, you should be okay. Knowing how to having like a software dev background will help you. I don't have a software dev background in the sense of I never did it for a job, but I know a lot of languages and I can read lots of code. I'm not so good at the low end stuff like C and ASM. That's assembly language, but the higher level interpret stuff, like I'm more than happy with, and source code analysis was fairly a breeze. But again, that's just from my personal experience and learning. But this course very much solidified that knowledge and very much helped me. To answer that kind of question, though, honestly, just need a passion for web apps, really, and be able to at least know a few languages and know how code works, and just be able to be like, okay, this code is doing this code is doing that, and know why that's a good or bad thing. So yeah, basically just have a passion, have a background, and just do some hack the box stuff, really. I'm going to link some hack the box boxes in the description for you to check out if you want to go ahead and do them. I might also do some videos on them myself to run through the intuition behind them. Like I say, I've just done the Sakura blog series. Hopefully that helps you. I would advise you watch it and you might learn some stuff. Okay, so are you allowed to Google stuff while taking an exam? Yes, you are allowed to Google. You can't obviously Google the answers, but you can Google methodologies and things you come across, errors and stuff. Yeah, so as long as you're not like breaching the terms of service in terms of actually watching someone's video on the exam or whatever, or just googling the answers, you're pretty much fine. But to be honest, if you're doing that in the first place, you're not really gonna pass because it's not. You might not get the same machines, anyways. Are you watched while taking the exam? Yes, you are. So they don't listen to you, but they watch your face. So for me, for example, I had the camera that just pointed at my face for like the first 12 hours or so of me doing it. Yeah, it was more like 16 hours I was doing OSW for roughly. That on the first day, and then a few hours on the next day. And I said, hey, look, I'm going to sleep. I put my camera behind my monitor. I let the invigilator aware of what I was doing. If I went to the toilet or got food, I would let them know. It was very chill. Honestly, just a case of just doing what you would do normally, but just don't cheat. Like, I mean, not that you cheat anyways, but I mean, just literally just try and pass the exam, like as long as you're not cheating, you're fine. Don't even think about them watching you, and you'll be fine. And just obviously let them know if you leave the room, let them know you're going. If you get to sleep, let them know you're going, and just say, hey, can I put my webcam behind my monitor? It's also worth mentioning that they cut your access to the VPN, or if they catch you using the VPN while you're away, they can ban you from the exam, kick you out. So again, don't do that. Make sure they're aware of whether you're there or not, and you won't have any problems. Um, what operating system do you test for OSWE? I'm pretty sure with the OSCP, you need to use Kali because it's pen testing with Kali. I don't know if you need to use any particular operating system with OSWE. To be fair, the report doesn't like the report can come in any form, I guess. Like, so it doesn't really matter because you're not doing infrastructure, you're doing like web app testing. But honestly, I would use Kali. It has Python installed and it has all the things you may need, and there's less firewall bits you have to work with, and it's just what's nice. Burp is installed there, at least Burp Community. While I'm on that point, you are not allowed to use Burp Pro. You can only use Burp Community. I advise if you use Burp Pro on the daily, I advise using Burp Community for a few weeks just to get used to the basic features because some things you just can't use. But learn what Burp Community gives you, and then obviously work with that. Okay, so some more exam related questions. How long is the exam? 72 hours. 48 hours to do the practical, so that's the hacking of the web apps, multiple web apps, and 24 hours to do the report. If for me personally, I did the exam in like the first day and a bit, around 20 hours or so, and then I spent I think it was like the Sunday or something doing the report. My report was around 70 or 80 pages. That may sound daunting, but that's because the way that I put it together, there's lots of screenshots and stuff. So yeah, it was around 80 pages, and it was just basically explaining each step. Are you watched by camera? Yes, you are. What the exam's like? Very chill. Honestly, you just do the boxes like you didn't hack the box. Just don't Google the answers. Pretty much. That's all you have to really know what to do. Don't Google the answers. Let the invigilator know when you're getting up and stuff like that, and let them know when you're going to sleep if you are at all, and you'll be fine. Um, yeah, the exams straightforward really. Just not straightforward, but just basically you're given some machines to pwn. You review the source code. You find vulnerabilities. You exploit them. You write a script to exploit them from 0 to RCE, and then then you submit. You also get flags too, so you get flags for the authorization bypass and the RCE. You submit the multiple flags, and you get your points. So, for example, me, I uploaded a number of flags, more than 2. That's all I can say, and I got 100 points for the number of flags that I provided. Okay. How do you pass the exam? Like I say, literally, just you're given a web app. You join the VPN. You're given a web app's IP. You're given the technology it runs on. You review the source code, decompile it, view it, VS Code it, whatever. You find vulnerabilities. You exploit the vulnerabilities, get authentication bypass or authorization bypass. Then RCE, submit the flags, get the points, do the report. If all is well, you'll pass. If you sleep during the exam, you can just let them know. Do they listen to your exam? Not that I'm aware of. I'm pretty sure they just watch you; they don't listen to you. How was the exam versus the course? So there's some practice. There's some practice machines in the course. Multiple of them. I think there's like 3 or 4. At least I think there was 3 or 4. Basically all covering different areas, and there's no help unless you look at the forums. Forums will help, but there's no help for those. You just have to basically pwn them. I think the course machines are probably harder than the exam machines because you have a limited time to do them. Whereas the exam machines you don't have a lot of time, so they make them a little bit simpler. But equally, you not having a lot of time can also be an issue because if you don't plan your time well, then you might, not complete the box, and then you might also just fail. But to answer that question, basically, the exam is slightly easier than the course challenge boxes, but only because you have less time, so they made them simpler. But equally, if you don't budget your time well and you don't, make any actual progress, then then they actually may indeed be harder. It just depends on obviously your understanding and your ability when it comes to web apps and source code review. Um, how many systems do you pwn? More than one. That's all I can say. Are the exam machines hard? Yeah, I'd say they're hard. I'd probably say they're like hard to insane level if you were talking hack the box. How did you find the exam? Again, I just did it like I was doing hack the box. Just yeah, just did source code review, found the vulnerabilities, and submit the report. Really, I know it's not really helpful, but it's just true. I just kept at it till I owned them. I knew I had a set time, so that was my objective: complete the box before the time runs out. um, what objectives of the exam? Authentication bypass, RCE, write a script that does all that work for you, multiple times for multiple boxes, submit the report. If everything goes well, you pass. How many points do you need to pass? You need to get 85% of the points to pass. Do you have to write a report? Yeah, you do, and it has to be basically leave nothing out in terms of you have to prove to them that you did it all yourself. Show the flags, show what you did, show what did and what didn't work. There's also a part where you just show this is how to pwn it in one go kind of thing versus this is how I got there. The methodology versus the proof of concept, basically. I think that pretty much summarizes all the questions I had. But yeah, just to summarize, read this, read the syllabus. This covers all of the areas in the exam, not in the exam, in the course. And yeah, you will be fine. And check out my video on pwning this web app. And I mean, I promise you'll learn something. If you watch my, I think it's 3 videos on this, you're bound to learn something that will definitely help you with the OSWE. It's basically 3 points. So yeah, I will link everything in the description. Again, go ahead and check out my series on this. This will be super helpful. I built it to help you without giving away any, without spoiling anything. And yeah, hopefully it comes out helpful. Sweet. So like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, everyone. Bye.